Within a 2-hour meeting, I committed to buying the business.
Within 2 hours?
2 hours.
What were you looking for in that meeting?
I don't know, actually. No experience in consumer brand building, no experience in sport, no experience in textiles. I had no fucking idea. I went to this meeting at the Puma Australian headquarters and I was wearing the Socceroos tracksuit top. And as I'm walking across, the temperature drops like 15 degrees in this room. All the people that are milling about stop and silence. And then I hear this, "How dare he?" And the lady behind the reception is sort of covering her eyes. And she calls Malcolm. Malcolm comes in and he comes in from the other side and he stops and he looks at me and he shakes his head and puts his... And he said, "What the fuck are you doing, man?"
Yeah.
I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Why are you wearing that?" I said, "Well, what?" And I had the 3 stripes down the sleeves.
Yeah. All right, guys, welcome to another episode of The Target Table. And today, joining us on the couch, we have Jaimie Fuller. And we've also got Dennis the Menace to my right. Jaimie Fuller, you're a former executive chairman of sportswear brand Skins. And you're currently the chairman and co-founder of Australian sports technology company EO Lab, a company that innovates products designed to improve sporting performance. And man, I'm really excited to unpack the whole world of sports and performance branding with you. But thank you so much for joining us today, man.
My pleasure, Dan. You must have a very boring life if you're excited to be talking about it.
Nah, come on, man. It's exciting. It's fascinating. Everything in the world of branding is fascinating to me, even if it's law, accounting.
Even if it's with boring people like me.
You're not boring. You're fascinating. You're doing amazing things, man, and you're breaking some serious ground in a really cutting edge space. I would say that, you know, when you're looking at sports and athleticism today, what would you say it is, man? Because I feel like if you go back through sports history and you look at who's the guy who ran the 1 minute mile? I always forget his name.
Yeah, Roger Bannister.
Roger Bannister,
and
right?
It was a 4-minute mile.
The 4-minute mile. There we go.
The 1 minute mile was probably done on a motorbike.
Yeah. The first guy to do the 4-minute mile. But like, I remember back then you would see leaps and strides in people's performance in the Olympics and so on and so forth. But like today with technology and the science and the data and everything we know, would you say that the gap between like high level performance and phenomenal performance has never been so like minuscule? What would you what would you say to that?
It's a tricky one. I think the most interesting thing for me about Roger Bannister is that 4-minute mile was so hard to break and it couldn't be broken for so long.
Right.
And once it broke, it then got shattered by lots of people.
Within like a month or something, right?
Absolutely. And we're in a similar situation today with the 2-hour marathon.
Whoa, okay.
Okay, so I think...
Like it hasn't been done, is that what you're saying?
It's like 2 hours and 20 seconds.
Right.
Now, there was a guy, there was an African guy...
What distance are you talking about though?
A marathon, 40... Fuck, help me out. 42,
is there a standard is there a standard format to I'm not
42.195 kilometers.
That's a standard marathon.
Standard marathon, 42,100.
And the world record is
2 hours and it's only in the last couple of months that it got down to 2 hours and 20 seconds, say, right?
Right. That's pretty damn close to 2 hours.
Now, this is interesting from a branding context as well. A little while ago, 18 months, 2 years, I'm not very good with my dates. There was a runner who took on the 2-hour marathon in a controlled set of circumstances. And he did it at a Formula One track in Italy. And they set it up, and it was basically set up by Nike. And it was to do with the release of their, I think it's called the Vaporfly, the release of their shoe.
Okay.
And it was primarily a public relations campaign. And what they did, which was really smart, is they surrounded him with a team of runners that ran in a wedge formation.
Like ducks.
Like ducks, like flying ducks, right?
Yeah.
And the purpose of the wedge formation was to break down the wind barrier.
Okay.
So he could run behind. They were the advanced runners were rotating, so they weren't all running for 42.195 kilometers.
Right. So similar to cycling.
So it was pacing.
Yeah.
They had a laser line that was running along the road where they'd worked out where he had to be at every point through the 2-hour period.
Whoa.
And he broke that. He broke that to 159 something or other. But because it was done under those circumstances, it doesn't stand as a world record.
So it was in controlled format.
It was controlled and it was...
You don't have weather and wind and competition.
It was assisted and it was like I said, it was on a Formula One track.
Yeah.
Whereas, you can go into a marathon, whether it's Chicago or New York or Tokyo or wherever, and you're dealing with whatever climatic conditions you get on the day, you're dealing with whatever that track is, that path is.
Weather, temperature.
Uphill, downhill.
Yeah.
There's no, it's not like 100 meters where it's very established, where it's flat or a 200 with a particular bend, all that sort of stuff. With marathon, you get what you get.
Yeah.
So I think going back to the whole Bannister situation,
Right.
I look at that, that fact that 2-hour marathon is close to being busted and it's been so hard to be broken.
You're right.
But when that goes, you watch, it's just going to go bang, bang, bang. Because this comes back to the ability of the mind to know what it can and it can't do. And when the mind knows it can't run the mile in 4 minutes or under, then it's not going to happen.
Right.
It takes one person to bust it and then suddenly behind it cascades.
And that almost like, if you look at, I saw something somewhere where didn't they ban music in marathons, like the ability for people to listen to music prior to?
I don't know about that.
I don't know if
that
you can.
Sounds pretty fucked up.
I know it sounds fucked up, but like there's a science to it. Apparently, like it was an unfair advantage because what would happen is people that were listening to music just before a marathon had a peak in performance, and I would say that's a lot to do with the mindset.
And are we talking about the Russians weren't allowed to use music,
I don't know, man.
Like marching bands beforehand.
I don't know. I'm in dangerous territory. I don't know what I'm talking about, but like I just saw it somewhere on the internet. But like I agree with you. I think when you're running a marathon, so much of it seems from people I've met who have done marathons, they're like, it's such a mental game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But all sport is.
Yeah.
When you look at any of these sports at the elite level, the difference is almost all in the head. I mean, physically, until you get an absolute freak like Usain Bolt, real outlier, the vast majority of people competing at that elite level, they've got the same sort of talent.
Right. So you say like genetically, some people just are like absolute behemoths at a said sport.
I would assume so. And Michael Phelps is another one in the pool.
Yeah.
Right. Absolute freak. But when you look at everybody else, I think a lot of it comes down to the mental. Now, having said this, I'm not pushing myself forward as some sort of elite coaching guru,
no.
right?
Yeah.
I'm just sort of telling you what I've seen in the last 20 odd years of being in the game.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the moment you're running a very successful company called EO, which we'll certainly dive into at some point. But I'd really like to peel back the veil and understand, how did you even end up in this industry? Because it all started off, from what I understand, with skins. Prior to that, you were in real estate or you were in different investment philanthropy. How did you even get into the whole world of wearable sports tech and innovating the industry of sports wear altogether?
I was doing a couple of things. I was in the printing industry.
Okay.
And I was doing property development.
Right.
And financially doing very well.
Yeah.
Fucking hated it. Hated it.
Okay.
Got no sense of any sort of self-satisfaction, any sort of purpose.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, money's great. I mean, we all love money and we all like money. Everybody likes to walk on a plane and turn left. So that's a great thing, but there's got to be way more to life than just making shitloads of money.
Yeah.
I mean, you've just got to look at the diabolical state of so many wealthy families and wealthy people and the problems that they have that we mere mortals think, oh, life would be so much better if I was rich. And it doesn't work that way,
Yeah.
And so I was scouting around looking for something else to do, and I was introduced to this business, which at that stage was called Compression Garment Technologies.
Yeah.
And it was broke. And it was literally 6 days away from going into administration. And I sort of had a meeting with the guy who had started it, and within a 2-hour meeting, I committed to buying the business.
Within 2 hours?
2 hours.
What were you looking for in that meeting?
I don't know, actually. And I was dragged into it.
Wait, how much money did you have? You're like, let's go for it.
No, I didn't even want to do it. I didn't want to go to the meeting.
How did you find yourself in the meeting? Like, it seems like
quite a buddy of mine dragged me in, and he was, and it was a smart little bugger.
He's like, you got money, let's bring him in.
Yeah. And what he wanted me to do is he wanted me to buy, or what he wanted me to do was to acquire the US distribution rights.
Okay.
And then he wanted me to appoint him to go and live in the US and run the business. Right?
Smart guy.
Yeah, good. Actually, great.
It's OPM, other people's money, right?
Yeah. No, but I love Mark anyway. And so he dragged me to this fucking meeting. I didn't want to go. It was on the other side of Sydney.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go there, but he forced me. And I'm sorry that there wasn't a camera there, because if there was a camera there, you would have seen me sit down and have my arms folded and sitting there going, I don't want to be here. What the hell am I doing?
Right.
And this guy started talking. His name was Brad.
Yeah.
And Brad started talking, and he put down in front of me an inch-thick pile of testimonials. And he's chatting away. And as he's chatting away, I'm sort of flicking through these testimonials.
And this is 2003?
2001, December 2001.
Right.
And I'm flicking through these things, looking at them. Or was it 2002? Sorry, 2002.
Yeah.
And I'm flicking through these, looking at them, and starting to get a little bit interested, because these testimonials, some of them were from elite players like Socceroos, like back in that period. But the majority of them were the head physiotherapist at Leeds United Football Club, the strength and conditioning coach at Essendon Football Club, the doctor from Australian cricket. I mean, there are a whole bunch of these really serious people.
Yeah. We're not just talking about like someone that trains at a gym. We're talking about professionals.
Yeah, we're talking, and not just professional athletes, but professional coaches and professional medicos.
Yeah.
And as he's talking, I'm looking, and my body posture changed. My arms opened up, and I listened more. And what was clear to me during that conversation was 2 hours. It was clear that they were in trouble. He didn't say it, and I didn't confront him, but it was clear that there was something could be done here. So we finished the meeting, and I walked out, and I asked for 3 numbers. Like, my due diligence were 3 numbers. What's the retail price, what's the wholesale price, and what's your cost?
Okay.
That was my DD. And we walked out, and we got in the car, and my buddy said to me, what do you reckon? You want to do it? You want to do it? Are we going to get the US rights? And I said, nah. And he looked crestfallen. I said, no, I want the whole fucking lot. And I sat in the car, and I rang Brad, and I said to him, I'm sitting outside in the car park. I said, let's cut the shit. I said, how much? You're in trouble, aren't you? And he said, yes. I said, how much do you need, and when do you need it? And he told me what he needed, and he needed it in 6 days. I said, what happens if you don't get it? He said, we'll go into administration. I'll put it into liquidation, and what I'll do is I'll take my IP, which is all in my head, and I'm going to go to Europe, and I'll set up again and start again. And I said to him, all right, I'll cut you a check in 3 days. I'll meet you in a lawyer's office in 3 days. We'll do documentation. I'll cut the check. But I didn't want 50. I didn't want the whole thing. I wanted 49%. And he had a bunch of angel investors.
Right.
And so my proposal to him was, I said, this is what we're going to do. I want 49%. I said, I'm not arrogant enough to come in here and say, I'm going to dictate what's going on. I said, I want you to have 41%. You pick one of your angels, and he gets 10% because you know them well. So between you, you've got 51%, you've got control. I'll take 49%. I think I can add some value. I think we can have some fun. And I said, are you sure that's enough money? He said, absolutely. That's all we need. That's plenty. So I said, all right, we'll do it. And we did it. And I went home and I spoke to my wife, and she went off her tits.
What was that conversation?
It's very fucking difficult.
Yeah.
And she made the point, and I'd already thought it through.
Yeah.
These testimonials might be completely...
Right.
It's not very hard to go online and download a logo from Cricket Australia and create your own letterhead in Word.
We're not advising anyone to do this.
No. And I'd thought that, this could be a con and it could be that, but I thought, fuck, you'd have to be pretty out there to do something like that because you're going to get caught. So that was my roll of the dice.
Yeah.
And like I said, my due diligence were 3 numbers. I'll tell you what they were. Yeah. Because these things, he had one product. He had 3 different versions of the one product. They were tights.
And just to educate people that are listening, the product is like wearable technology to help athletes perform.
This was tights.
Yeah.
Right. And it came out of
compression technology. Which, if you could explain what your definition of that is,
it's actually it comes out of medical compression. So if you go and have a varicose vein operation,
right,
or if you have open heart surgery, you have a number of things. They will put compression stockings on you whilst you're in bed.
Yep.
The purpose of the compression stocking, because your blood, what your blood does, it goes down to your limbs in your arteries, and it comes back up through your veins.
Yep.
It's called venous return. And if you can enhance your venous return, if you can make that blood flow faster from your feet all the way back up to your heart, then it flows faster from your heart back to your feet. So you get that.
Speeding up the circuit.
And if you do that, you'll deliver, because blood carries oxygen. Oh. And if you can deliver more oxygen to those, not just extremities, but to your muscles, your quadriceps, your calves, right? If you can deliver more oxygen, you're going to get a performance enhancement. Now, it's not a question of I run the 100 meters in 9.8 and I put these on and I'm now 9.74.
Yeah.
It's a question of when you compete, you get micro tears in your muscles.
Yeah.
Skiing is a perfect example. When you can go out, you can ski 2 weeks a year. You go out the first day, you ski the shit out of it, you come back, you go to bed, you get up the next morning and you collapse. Your legs are agony.
Yeah.
You wear these things, it doesn't happen.
Okay.
Because that constant flow of blood helps repair micro tears in your muscles.
Right.
And it helps you recover faster. And the idea being is the faster that I can recover, the sooner I can go and push myself and work harder and get fitter and get stronger, the better I'll be at whatever competition I'm playing.
Right.
So we basically thought, and that's what I thought, this is the great thing, because nobody had done this. You could go and buy Nike tights and Adi tights and running tights and all that shit.
At this time,
Yeah.
2002?
You could just get ordinary tights.
Right.
But they're not compression. Right? They're tight fit, but the compression works where you're applying specific amounts of pressure on different parts of your limbs.
Yeah.
And you can appreciate the complication with that is sizing, because we're all built differently.
Yeah.
And if you take your diameter of your legs
Yep.
at different parts,
Yeah.
it's about how that fabric interacts with the sizing and interacts with your limb to give you. And so if you get a hematoma or a bad bruise, right, what do they call it when you get a dead leg or something, right? If you get that, what happens is they massage it out of you, right? That's massage is promoting blood flow.
Yeah.
What these things do, fuck it, this is an ad for Skins. I can't believe I'm doing it.
I didn't know all this. I've got a pair, and I was like, I feel good when I wear them, and I
these
recover
things-
faster, and all the rest
These
of it.
things give you a permanent massage.
Yeah.
It's at a lower intensity, but it's
Yeah.
so that's why they wear them after. That's why they sleep in them,
Right.
because it's a bit like you've got this. You wear them for 9 hours at night,
Yeah.
and it's a bit like having this low intensity massage.
Huh.
So the next morning, happy days.
Yeah.
So the three numbers. I'll go back to the three numbers.
yeah.
Long story short, long story long. I said to him, "Give me the numbers," and they were this: retail price $140, which is $126 plus GST.
Yeah.
Wholesale price, Keystone, $63. So retailer buys them for 63, sells them for 126.
The double A money.
Yep,
Yeah.
50% margin. Cost price, $31.50. So $31.50 to buy for the brand, sell it for 63, Keystone margin. Retailer buys it for 63, sells it for 126 plus GST.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, they're doing fuck all volume. They're manufacturing in Australia. They've got Australian fabric, Australian cotton. So I have no idea how much these things should cost. But the one thing I do know, you get volumes to a reasonable volume, you move that manufacturing offshore, that $31.50 is going to drop.
Yeah.
As it was at its best, it dropped from $31.50 down to $10.
Wow.
Right. Suddenly, it's happy days margin-wise. And that then gives you a lot of freedom, getting back to the branding story and the marketing story. Because if you look at, and this is what I fucking hate in this industry, is the lack of creativity, strategic and business creativity, where everything is formulaic.
Right. I see.
Okay.
Like,
oh no, it's 10%.
we've always done it this way. Let's do it.
Yep.
Just keep doing it that
Yep.
same way.
The accountants come in and we're gonna this is the way it's going to be, and we're going to spend 10% of our revenue on marketing. Sorry, you
Right.
don't build great brands spending 10% of your revenue on marketing.
Yeah.
You've got to, and you've got to prime the pump. You've got to do stuff so that when we did our first campaign, I spent more money in marketing than we were turning over.
Whoa.
So you've got to have the confidence that you're going to do something. But I knew if I could get this volume to a certain point, I could then manufacture offshore. The margins would then be well worthwhile, because a 50% margin business in this game is not sufficient.
Okay. So your background is in, a very different industry, and you're coming into this. Like, did you have any experience in this space?
So, no experience in consumer brand building, no experience in sport, no experience in textiles. I had no fucking idea.
Yeah.
None whatsoever. But a combination of, I won't call it arrogance, but I'll call it confidence and stupidity / naivety, right?
Isn't that arrogance?
Probably.
Sounds like a cocktail for arrogance.
No, probably.
Continue, man. Yeah.
Probably. Made me think that I think I can do this.
Okay.
And it was worth waiting. And
It was like a gut thing.
Oh,
you
totally,
think?
totally.
Yeah.
And it also comes down, this sort of shit, when you're investing, it comes down on risk versus reward.
Okay.
And I looked at what the risk was, and I thought to myself, if this works, it's really going to work.
Right.
Right. If it really works, then it's worth having a crack. And I can have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Love sport, always love sport, keen on it.
Yeah.
Love to put my toe in the water and have a play.
Okay. And to be clear here, you guys had a pioneering product. No one else was doing this in the market.
Well, that was the key thing. Nobody was doing this. And Adi and Nike and Reebok and Puma and Under Armour were all selling tight fit shit.
Yeah.
But they had you get no physiological benefit from it keeps you warm when you go for a run, right?
Yeah. And it looks nice, but it doesn't have a performance component to it. So you invest in, you go in 49%. What's the learning curve from that point? Diving into a completely foreign market where you have no experience. Like what do you do in that situation? How did you pick up the ability to know what to do with the branding and so on?
Well, I didn't.
Yeah.
It started with, we had 3 brands.
Yeah.
There was Sport Skins, Snow Skins and Jet Skins.
Okay.
And in my, it was a naive view, but sometimes good shit comes out of that.
Right.
I immediately went to an execution perception of having ground signage at a football game.
Yeah.
And I thought it's going to be pretty fucking stupid having 3 different brands on that ground signage.
Right. Let's compress
We need one brand.
the brands into one.
And it sort of made sense to make that brand Skins,
Okay.
right? And then you then go through the hierarchy and think, okay, I can still have those 3 products.
Yeah.
And I can have Skins Sport, Skins Travel and Recovery, and Skins Snow. But the master brand is Skins. Now I can see brand signage in marketing, advertising, ground signage, whatever you like. Out of home. Now I can see how that works. Okay, fine. Go and do the work.
So did you guys look at that as a rebrand, or like how did you?
Look, it was I don't know that you'd call it a rebrand because the business was like minuscule, and at that stage it was just constantly losing money, and it was about investing, and also I inherited a really interesting guy, a gorgeous guy called Graham Arnold.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. And Arnie was consulting to the business. And it was a bit of a freak. Brad had been one day out to Redfern Oval to see South Sydney, the Rabbitohs.
Yeah.
And he was talking to the physio or whomever it was, and he looked over and said, "Is that Graham Arnold over there?" And Arnie was doing goal kicking coaching, right? Not a lot of people know, but he's an awesome goal kicking coach with a rugby ball, because the principle of goal kicking is very similar to football.
Yeah, like a drop kick. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And so we started talking to Arnie, and Arnie came on board and his role was to help access a professional sport, to get the product out to professional. And
Like
that
networking or like just
networking,
just getting your
introduction,
foot in the door.
open doors, all that
Yeah.
stuff. And that was fucking awesome. And the reason that it was, you think about it, 2002,
Yeah.
you know where the Socceroos were, right? Yeah. We're talking the golden age of Australian football.
Yeah.
2002, 2003, right? You know, the Cools, the Vidukas, your mate, right?
Yeah.
All that unbelievable talent.
Yeah.
But the best thing was they'd all go into camp. Arnie would take in Skins, explain it, and the conversation wasn't so much with the players as with the coaches. And you're talking to coaches and you're talking to physios, strength and conditioners, doctors,
Yeah.
who have an understanding of medical. And when you talk about medical grade compression and the philosophy and the concept, they all go, fuck, that's pretty simple. Why wasn't that done before? Why? So the next thing is they're saying to the players, wear this. The players put it on. The players wake up the next morning and go, shit, normally my legs feel heavy and painful the next morning.
So
They
it's an
feel
immediate reward.
instant. And so
Yeah.
then what happens is they fuck off after the Socceroos camp.
Yeah.
Harry goes back to Leeds,
Yeah.
right? Schwarzer goes back to Middlesbrough. Viduka goes to wherever, or Manchester United. The next thing you know is they're going to finish in the change room and Manchester United come in and they shower. The players come in and shower. And one of the guys is pulling on Skins and the other guys are going, what the fuck are you wearing? And they say, oh man, these are unbelievable. The next thing you know, and we saw it, Cristiano Ronaldo, photo in the paper, wearing Skins.
Whoa.
Right? So that was like unbelievably serendipitous that I inherited.
You can't plan that. It just happens.
Of course you can't.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that gave us, because the next step is we were then investing, and we were basically, you know, trying to prove things. And I remember Arnie lined up a call one night for me and Brad with Manchester United's doctor, a guy called Doc Stone. And I remember sitting there at 10 o'clock at night in the office and having this call with Doc. And his attitude was eye-opening for me, because it never occurred to me. He basically said, look, you guys have got to understand, and this is 2002, right? He said, I've got £1 billion worth of meat running around my football field out here. Right now, £1 billion, that's
a one way to call it.
Well, that's what one player's just knocked back from Saudi, right? In 2024, right? So, but back then, £1 billion was a lot of money for the whole team.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm not going to fuck around and try this out until you guys validate it and prove it. And then we thought, that's an interesting idea. How do we validate it and prove it? You know, how do we prove that this thing does? And so we did that through, I won't bore you with it, but it's through measuring creatine kinase levels and how quickly that exits the body through enhanced blood flow. And that went down the journey of not just how do we create something that moves the needle to help athletes perform, but then how do we prove it? And for the first 2 years, I would suggest that 80 to 90% of our revenue came from sales to elite athletes, footballers, federations, clubs.
Okay. Just bulk orders.
But you know, not too bulky, but you know, those were the deals we did. And there were a couple of really interesting things. The first one was we were the 4 key guys in the business, so there were me and 3 other key managers.
Yeah.
None of us came from the world of sport. None of us came from sport.
Right.
So we didn't know what we couldn't do.
I see.
And so we were selling to the Wallabies and the Aussie cricket team. We were selling at that stage 16 Premier League clubs. Of the 16 AFL clubs, I think we were selling to 14 or 15 of them. So these were sales. And we'd go and visit them and leave them a pair to try. They'd put it on one of their players with the biggest leg problems, and the next day we get the phone call, we want 140 pairs. And not only did we sell to them, we sold it to them at retail price, not wholesale, and we gave them a 10% discount for bulk order.
Yeah.
And we did that, like I say, because we didn't know we couldn't do that, because every other sports brand can't do this. Because at the very best, you're giving them product for free and hoping they'll wear it, or hoping they'll be seen to wear it.
Yeah.
But most likely you're going to pay them.
So like ignorance is bliss a little bit in this situation?
That's why I say it's that we didn't know we couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And the fucked up thing is we didn't value what we had.
Right.
So anyway, we're doing this for 2 years. We're selling it to these guys. And then I was introduced to an ad agency in Melbourne that had just opened in Sydney, and they were looking to make an impact. And it just so happened that 2 weeks earlier, I'd had an approach and a meeting with, you know, those dreadful fucking advertising companies. I think it's called Brand Power.
Okay.
Right, terrible, awful retail. You see it like lunchtime during the week. You know, hello, I'm Ethel, and I'm here to talk to you about brand. Right. Anyway, these guys. You
said it.
I hope they're not your sponsors. Anyway, these guys.
Definitely not.
These guys came in to see me, and I said, look, you're wasting your fucking time. I can't afford TV, and we're not big enough. And they said, oh, you'd be surprised. You'd be very surprised what sort of deals you can do on TV. Mm-hmm. Anyway, met with this new agency, and they came in to see us in the office. And then they brought in a couple of people, the CEO and their head of creative, their CD. And we sat there and they said, tell us about the business. And I told them and talked it through. And the creative guy looked at me and said, fuck off. I said, I beg your pardon. He said, you're bullshitting us.
Yeah.
I said, no, I'm not. And he said, no. He said, you seriously aren't going to sit there and tell me that you are selling your product at retail price with a 10% discount to the Wallabies, the Socceroos, Cricket Australia, Premier League clubs, AFL clubs. I said, I am. He said, I don't believe you. You are bullshitting me.
Wow.
So I stood up, I walked into the accountant's office and I came out with a folder and I pulled out all the file of invoice. I said, flick through that. And he flicked through. He said, I can't believe this.
Yeah.
He said, I've never seen anything like this. So they fucked off and they said, we need to go away and think. And they rang us 2 weeks later and said, we've got to talk. Went in for a meeting. I had a marketing guy then who was a part-time marketing guy, and his background was FMCG.
Mm-hmm.
Sat down and they pitched us a TVC. And it was a brand campaign. Now, I'm a numpty and I don't know anything about marketing, brand building, textiles, sport. But at that stage, the face of our brand was Steve Waugh. I inherited Steve Waugh. Steve came with the business. Do you know who Steve Waugh is, Dane?
You're going to have to
I
educate
love
me.
him.
I
Man.
could tell by the look in your eyes.
I know you know who
I
he
know
is.
who
I
he
have
is.
no idea.
Yes.
Yeah, please educate me.
He's like one of Australia's greatest cricketers. He was captain of the Australian cricket team. And
Oh, wow.
And an absolute god. And even today, he's still a god.
Yeah.
And my vision for the ad was quite simple. Here's Steve striding across a cricket field, looking down the camera. Hi, I'm Steve Waugh. I want to talk to you about this product. This is what it does. This is how it does it. Blah 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 blah. So that was my expectation going into this pitch. So we sit down, listen to this pitch, and it's a brand campaign. And I'm sitting there thinking, fuck, I don't get this, right? It's built around the concept of we don't pay sports stars to wear our products, they pay us, which was built on the truth that we sell our products to the elite.
Yeah.
And we argued for 2 hours. And my marketing buddy with me, who is, as I said, ex-FMCG, he kept saying, but where's the pack? You're not showing the pack, like you got to put the pack on the shelf. And
Yeah.
That's where his head's at.
Yeah.
I'm saying, well, where's Steve Waugh? right? And we argued.
Yeah.
And we really argued strenuously. And man, at the end of the 2 hours, the creative director said to me, Jaimie, with all due respect, you do not know what you're talking about. You're speaking shit. And I said, yeah, you're right. But I said, I'm the dickhead that's got to cut the check for $1 million to pay for the whole stuff behind this. So I need to be sure. But I said, you are right.
Yeah.
And I said, but having said that, you guys have argued so vociferously and you are so adamant about this, we're going to do it. And I committed to it and we went off and did it, and that exploded.
Wow.
That was the thing that exploded the business back in 2006.
What part of you in that meeting when you were debating it for 2 hours was the linchpin that you were like, I'll trust you?
Yeah, and
because that's a lot.
Frankly,
that's a lot of money.
I tell you what, it was the fact that he said to me, "You're speaking shit. And you don't know what you're talking about." And as an outsider in this world, I'm used to seeing situations where the client's always right. Right, we're going to kiss his ass. We're going to say we think he's speaking bullshit, but we're not going to tell him, and we're going to say okay. And I said to them, then afterwards today, the greatest thing they did was tell me I didn't know what I was talking about and I was speaking shit. Because it's that sort of honesty that you want and you desperately
I think so.
need. And he kept saying to me, he said, Jaimie, we're here to make your brand famous. Right? This is going to make your brand famous. That's what this is all about.
Wow.
Because I didn't know the difference. At that stage, I had no idea of the differentiation between a brand campaign and a transactional campaign, right? Functionality, are we going to push functionality and transactional shit, or are we going to talk about the brand?
Yeah.
And that whole thing about, do you buy with your heart or do you buy with your head?
Right.
Right? And unless you're Swiss, you buy with your heart.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe some Germans. But that's the reality that so many fucking businesses and brands don't understand.
Right. Okay. And that's the reason I wanted to touch on that, because I think how frequent does it happen where a creative outfit, whatever they are, have a brilliant idea and the person in front of them that's cutting the check just doesn't
Shuts it down.
They
Sure.
just shut it down.
Yeah,
and this
and-
has happened to me where I've seen something in the market and I'm like, there's $3 million right there in the next 6 months. And I'm adamant it's there, but they can't see it.
And you hit you said the magic word, trust.
Yeah.
Right?
That's the linchpin.
It is.
How
trust.
do we make sure that both parties can go, all right, let's trust
Well,
each other.
you need somebody who is prepared to trust, and that's I've got lots of negative traits, but that's one of my positive traits.
You have a good radar.
I like to think it's a good radar. My wife will tell you it's a shit radar, and I've lucked.
But you're like, I found you.
I've got the luck sometimes, and I've been able to hit it a couple of times.
Yeah.
But it's trust, and obviously there are many fuckwits out there who will just speak bullshit, spout bullshit. And I've gone down that path before.
But you made a point that individual was very honest to you and was willing to tell you.
Which it's so rare.
It's very rare.
It's so rare. And I just love that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, don't contradict me just for the sake of contradicting.
No.
Right? Let's have a grown-up conversation.
Yeah.
And open my eyes.
Yeah.
Right?
And to be fair, I've been on the other end of that. I've been the CD and I've been that pain in the ass, annoying, confronting character to a CEO. It's very rare they pick up on it. More often than not, I see an inflated ego afterward versus a reality.
And it doesn't, as you know, it doesn't need to be the CEO.
It doesn't.
It can be the head of marketing or.
What I'm trying to give you a compliment. Like
thank you very much.
Yeah, like you had this guy call you out on it, and you're like, yeah, you're right. You didn't allow your ego to get in the way of that decision.
Yeah, but I couldn't. I mean, come off it. I mean, like I said, I hadn't been in this game. I hadn't done it before.
You're like, the guy's called me out.
It'd be pretty fucking stupid for me to stand there and say, that's bullshit. I do know what I'm talking about.
You mean for
because
more
I
than
can
2
sell
hours?
print.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and I can do a subdivision of a block of land. I know what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that'd be.
So how much is navigating a brand, from your opinion, is a collaborative effort versus trusting yourself all the
Well,
time?
it's not just navigating a brand. It's everything in business, right? You know, I mean, like everybody talks about it's about the people. It's about the people, and of course it is.
Yeah.
And if you surround yourself with numpties, you can have a problem. I mean, one of the beautiful things, having now gone from the skins debacle, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. You know, where we had, I don't know, 100 and something, 200 employees globally, and you know what it's like. If you work with 100 people, you're going to have the bell curve.
Yeah.
You're going to have some down on one extreme end of the bell curve who are shit, and you'll think, I'll never fucking go near there again.
Yeah.
You'll have others at the other end of the bell curve, and you'll think, I would work with you again in a heartbeat.
Right.
And then you'll have a big, blob in the middle.
Yeah.
Where you're,
Yeah.
You know, well, they're good, but, they didn't really tickle your nuts. Whereas what I've been able to do with this one is go back to the people who I absolutely love and who were fabulous.
Yeah.
And work with them now.
Yeah. So when you do this campaign, it pays dividends. You're going toe to toe with some of the world's biggest brands, Adidas.
Yeah, but
Nike.
they didn't give a fuck about us, and
You were flying under the radar at this point. Still.
Yeah, very much.
Right.
Where they did give a fuck about us is when, then from a, we're going to go long on this. I hope you guys have got time. Because,
Yeah, we got time, man. It's all good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where it got really, really interesting, because they didn't care. We're a nothing, who cares?
Yeah.
Suddenly, after year one, when we're now working with all these AFL clubs as an example,
Yeah.
and if you look at, pick a club, Essendon's contract with Puma
Right.
that sets out Puma's rights,
Okay.
there's no such thing as a compression category that's articulated in that contract. Right? They've got a training shirt, they've got a playing shirt, they've got a pair of shorts.
Now
they've
they're
got some
wearing
socks.
something that's allowed.
Well, it depends what you mean, in what context. It's allowed by the governing body.
Right.
What you've got, though, is you've got Puma spewing, because now they're seeing players, a club that they sponsor, with players running around with a fucking great big Skins logo running down the side of the leg. And they're going, whoa.
Yeah.
That we were then able to then enter into contracts where instead of them buying the product, we engaged with a what's-he deal, where a value in kind deal, where we gave them $30,000 worth of product and we got $30,000 worth of marketing rights.
Okay.
Okay,
Yep.
and that really rocked the Nike Adidas. That really rocked their boat,
They're like, who the hell is this
because
guy?
they're saying how you can't do that to Port Adelaide. And Port Adelaide are saying, well, here's our agreement.
Yeah.
There's nothing in, because the compression category didn't exist. But what happened is then when the Nike deal with Port Adelaide came up for renewal, guess what?
Yeah.
There's
We
no-
have compression.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? They're saying, because if I'm paying you 1.2 million, whatever that number is,
Right.
and I'm also getting your merchandising rights,
Yeah.
I'm also wrapping up the compression category. So that changed, we changed that industry.
Wow. So have you seen, there's this interesting documentary about a shoe brand called And One.
Yeah,
Have you seen the documentary?
it's a cracker.
It's a cracker. And if anyone's not seen it, it's essentially a documentary about a shoe brand that kind of blows up and starts gaining traction in the suburban basketball scene.
And I learnt what And One comes, because I didn't know where the name and one came from.
What I forget what it was in the
basketball
documentary.
term. It's a basketball term when you shoot and shoot another one. It's like
and one, I got another one in.
Yeah.
And they became a sensation, but like as soon as Nike were like, oh, it's a threat, they didn't play games, man. So like when this happened, what happened after that? Were Nike coming after you guys? Like what was the play after that?
And it wasn't so much Nike. It at a certain point, the category becomes a little bit ubiquitous. Nike push out and do their version,
Right.
which isn't as technical as ours. It's not as it doesn't
like
deliver the
check the box.
physiological.
Yeah.
But they produce Nike Pro and they put a big marketing campaign behind it.
Right.
And so eventually that whole deal about selling something for $140 against Nike's 80 becomes more difficult, and it starts to cannibalize our business. And then that then forces us into doing stupid things, which then becomes the vicious circle. I mean, coupled with the fact that I did a disastrous private equity deal back in 2007, like really bad.
Yeah.
That set us up for going broke, which we did in 2019.
Okay. So from the way we understand it, you ran that company for how many years was it? 16?
Yeah, from end of 2002 through to 2019, early 19.
Okay. And what would you say, what year was the height of the brand?
So in terms of impact, we did our first marketing campaign in 2005. That came to fruition commercially in 2006. Yeah. Suddenly, lots of people are talking about us.
Right.
Not just here, but internationally.
Globally, Skins was huge. Yeah.
Yeah. We then went into the UK in a big way.
Yeah.
Used the same campaign over there. Really got under Nike's skin because we hijacked their logo. The creative guy, brilliant. To go with the TVC.
What do you mean you hijacked their logo?
He did a billboard campaign.
Yeah.
Which had three executions: a baseballer, a basketballer, and a gridiron player.
Okay.
Staring down the barrel of the camera.
Yeah.
Line: we don't pay sports stars to wear our products; they pay us. So the gridiron player's holding his helmet and holding a football and looking down the camera and sneering. And in place of the snare, they'd superimposed an upside down Nike swoosh. And it was fucking brilliant.
Oh, let's see if we can find this. Yeah.
And we did this knowing full well that Nike would not sue us but issue a cease and desist.
Yeah.
So when we pushed it out in Australia, on one weekend we had billboards up at Taylor Square. We had full page ads in magazines like Sunday newspaper magazines, all that shit, as part of that launch campaign. And I even had prepared for the billboard, was a gag to cover the mouth with printed over the top of it was censored by US corporate giant, right? Because I knew that Monday morning I was going to come in and there would be a fax from Nike's lawyers saying cease and desist. Because obviously I looked at, can they sue me for $1 million? No, they've got to go through the process and issue a cease and desist. So I was ready for it. Came in Monday, no fax. Tuesday, no fax. And it went on and on and on. And so after a couple of weeks, I thought, well, fuck this, I'm going again. And we ran the ad again, right? And we kept running.
Yeah.
Arnie told me later, years later, he told me, because he was with, like, Nike were Socceroos sponsor. I don't know if I should tell this. But Arnie told me later, he said that Nike in Australia were fucking furious. But they knew, give them their due, they knew that if they tried to block us, we would turn that into a PR windfall.
So you kind of wedge-tailed it where like they were forced to not do anything about it.
And we kept running. We kept running, and it was great.
Oh, that's funny.
Go to the UK a year later, launch in the UK, Sam campaign.
Yeah.
Straight away, cease and desist. No, and in the UK,
not this time.
When we launched in the UK, I think we did page dominant or full page in 6 newspapers.
Yeah.
And somebody told me later on that one of the professional rugby teams was travelling. They were on the team bus to the game. And suddenly one of the guys started absolutely pissing himself. And before you know it, this newspaper passed around. This is like Premier League division players. Every player on the bus saw it. And they're all pissing themselves about it, right? I mean, that really, that was the thing that connected with not just with mug punters,
right,
but with elite, because they got that tongue in cheek.
That's pretty ballsy, man. I think, like, even when we look at your current branding for EO, like it seems like you really have this daring, I'll do what I want, you can't push me around kind of demeanor behind the creation of both of these brands.
Well, when you skins with a pissy little budget going up against a Nike and an Adi, you got to get hurt. I mean, my mantra is ambivalence is the enemy.
Yeah.
So in those days, we were doing, like, I can't believe I'm saying this, we were placing advertisements in magazines. You know, it doesn't happen today, does it? You know? And you could sit there and flick through Inside Sport magazine and yo-hum, ho-hum, boring, fucking boring. But suddenly you've got something that confronts you. Now, it's going to piss some people off, right? And some of it really pushed that line. I remember one line we had which was targeting women. Men will love you, women will hate you. Good thing you're not a lesbian, right? I mean, fucking terrible, right? Really, in hindsight, right? Really terrible.
Yes.
Right? And we learned our lesson.
Yeah.
Because there's that issue about, you know, controversy for the sake of controversy versus
being clever about it,
being clever and not being scared to offend.
Yeah.
And because if you're too scared to offend, I know all you're going to do is you're going to dumb down the creative, and now we're back to ambivalence. Now we're back to just ho-hum. You're not getting cut through, and you're relying on the fact that this thing has got to be seen however many thousand times in order to try and get people to notice you.
Do you know much about the story behind Nike going toe-to-toe with Adidas early on?
I know a lot of the early story, but I don't necessarily know the specifics of the.
I don't know. Cam, you're gonna have to fact check this man in the background here, but like from what I understand, earlier, like if you go back to the 80s, from what I've seen is Adidas seemed to have the monopoly over the shoe market.
Because they go back to the 50s.
They go back to the 50s, right? And you actually corrected us before, because if you go to America, they say Adidas, but yeah, if you could unpack what's the actual terminology in the story behind Adidas?
It's Adidas. Because Adidas was created and invented by Adolf Dassler.
Yeah. It was two German brothers, or
he and his brother came from a small town called Herzogenaurach in Bavaria.
Yeah.
And they were, through the war, they were manufacturing soldiers' boots for the German army.
Yeah.
And Adi stayed to run the factory to manufacture the boots, and the brother got kicked out and had to go to a fight.
Right.
And it wasn't so much the brothers, it was the brothers' wives. And what ended up happening was each wife dobbed the other brother in. One dobbed them into the Nazis as being an Allied sympathiser, and the other dobbed the other one in as being a Nazi collaborator. I mean, really, it was like that.
That's pretty dark.
Oh, fuck, it was really bad. So there was a massive falling out.
Yeah.
So the brother, he then goes and sets up his own footwear business called Puma. And that's why today, if you
I forgot that.
If you go to Herzogenaurach,
rivalry.
If you go to Herzogenaurach, on the two sides of that little river, one side is Puma and the other side is Adi. And I had my moment.
Like an eternal beef, just like.
I had my moment. Would have been 2005.
Yeah.
Down in Melbourne, going to a meeting at Puma, and Arnie had given me an Aussie tracksuit, and I went to this meeting at the Puma Australian headquarters, walked in the front door, and they've got this big atrium that you walk across to get to the reception desk. And I was wearing the Socceroos tracksuit top. And I walk in and I start walking, and as I'm walking across, the temperature drops like 15 degrees in this room. All the people that are milling about stop and silence, and then I hear this, "How dare he?" I had no idea what the fuck was going on. So I wander over and I get to reception, and the lady behind the reception is sort of covering her eyes, and she says, "Yes, can I help you?" And I said, "I'm here to see," guy's name was Malcolm McDowell, I'm here to see Malcolm.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get him. So she and I've got these people looking daggers at me.
Yeah.
And she calls Malcolm. Malcolm comes in, and he comes in from the other side, and he stops and he looks at me and he shakes his head and puts his and he said, "What the fuck are you doing, man?"
Yeah.
I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Why are you wearing that?" I said, "When we were what?" And I had the 3 stripes down the sleeves. And and he explained the situation. And there's this massive hatred that goes back to these two brothers dobbing each other in, whether themselves or their wives being dobbed in to. The Nazis and the Allies fought. And that until not that long ago, I think it was probably in the last either 5 or 8 years or so,
Yeah.
the new management of both of the companies got together and created a football game between the two companies.
Can we find that? That's wild.
and it's
They put the beef. They buried the hatchet.
Because this is like generations.
Yeah.
Right. But it was so deeply ingrained in the culture of each of the companies.
Yeah.
And like I say, I saw that firsthand. And it was a shocking moment for me walking into that Puma headquarters and getting that response.
And just being so naive about it. It's just like, well, what's the problem? You know?
Oh, I had no idea. Yeah. You know.
So from what I understand, like what Nike had to do early on, because Adidas, I'll make sure I say it correctly, had a monopoly in the shoe market, and Nike and Phil Knight were like, how do we get an advantage?
Yeah, I think the more interesting story about Nike is when you know that when they started off with the distribution rights for a brand called Onitsuka. And you know, Onitsuka is
that the Japanese
It's
brand?
the forerunner for Asics.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Right? And that's why Asics produce a line now called the Onitsuka Tiger. And Phil Knight, I'll give him his due. You know, he had this brand that he was basically buying these shoes out of Japan, these Onitsuka shoes, and he was going and selling them. And he sat down, he thought, what the fuck am I doing here? You know, why am I building somebody else's brand?
Yep.
And that was when he got together with Bob Bowman. That was when they created the waffle iron sole. And he created a point of difference, a technical point of difference. And then he got sued by Onitsuka.
I didn't know that.
And he found his lawyer, he couldn't afford to pay his lawyer to represent him. And he found a young guy who just graduated who said he'd do the case for him, a guy called Rob Strasser. And Strasser ran the case and they won $1 million payout out of Onitsuka. And after that, Strasser went to Phil and said, look, you know, I'd like to be part of what you're doing and I think I can do more in a strategic sense for you. And he went to work for Phil. And frankly, and I know a bunch of the old hands from Nike.
Okay.
Rob was the guy that was the secret and the magic behind the success of Nike. And as things happen, he and Phil eventually had a big falling out because as they got bigger and did more and it got crazy, his attitude was, Phil, just fuck off and get back in your room and count your cash, mate. Leave it to me. Phil, on the other hand, saying, no, mate, I'm the guy. This success is down to me. Right. And so they had the big falling out and Rob went.
What was Rob bringing? How is he bringing magic to Nike?
It was about strategic positioning. It was about finding channels. It was about, you know, going after basketball. It was about creating a culture. It was a culture as much as anything.
Okay.
They used to have a thing called butt faces, where they'd go away for like long weekend and they'd bring the team together, which included sales, marketing, and they would have this wild time that was so important in their creative development of their culture and their DNA, which came through their brand. And it came through in the attitude because those days it's all about getting into retail and selling to retail and selling through, of course, within retail. And it was that Rob drove in that aggressive culture that was absolutely amazing. And Phil is, because Phil's a bit of an introvert, you know. I mean, Phil's not a bit, he's a lot of an introvert.
Yeah.
He's not a fellow well-met guy. Rob was.
Okay.
And so, funnily enough, so they have the falling out. Rob goes, takes another guy called Peter Moore. Peter's a design genius.
Yeah.
And takes another guy called Tim McCool. And Tim was a sales guy.
Yeah.
And they set up a little consulting arm. And this coincides with another guy called, Louis Dreyfus, Robert Louis Dreyfus.
Okay.
One of the wealthiest men in Europe. One of the oldest wealthy families in Europe.
Wow.
Julia Louis Dreyfus's cousin, by the way, if anybody's a Veep or a Seinfeld fan. So Robert buys Adidas out of bankruptcy for 10,000 euros.
When?
I'm going to see if I get this right, late 80s.
That would have pissed Phil off.
10,000.
Whoa.
He had to put his hand in his pocket to the tune of 10,000.
Any of this.
10,000 euros, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't know what he's got.
Yeah.
Coincides with Strasser and Peter and Tim having gone into this little consulting business, and has a meeting with these guys because he knows how important they've been in the creation and the establishment of Nike.
Yeah.
And then they go and start working for him. And the first thing they do, because no one knows what they've got, and they say, well, let's have a look at what do we have in this business that we've just purchased that's busted and that's rooted. And they start looking at the designs and they look at their heritage stuff. I mean, this is Adidas, right? This goes back to the Miracle of Bern in 1954.
Yeah.
This is the man that invented the interchangeable stud, which is why the Germans beat the Hungarians in the final of the World Cup in 54, when the Hungarians had been undefeated for 3 years, right? Yeah. Because it pissed down with rain. And the Hungarians couldn't hold their feet. But Adi at half-time changed all the studs in the boots. Yeah. And the Germans, I mean, this is an unbelievable story. So they go in and start looking at it, and they realise that there's this unbelievable library of heritage line of product. And it was Peter who then designed, and Rob, who then created the concept of splitting the Adidas brand into two, the performance sector and the heritage or the fashion sector.
Oh, I see. Because then you had like Run DMC kind of repping the...
Well, then the first thing they do is they need to create logos, because the Adidas logo was the thing called the trefoil.
Yeah. Which was that with the 3 lines?
No. So Peter designed the 3 lines.
Can we pull up those logos?
Peter... Yeah. So they had the trefoil, which looks a little bit like a 3-leaf clover.
I know the one. That's the original logo?
That's the original Adidas logo. Yeah. Right? And so they say, right, now what we're going to do is we're going to create this heritage.
This one here with the 3 lines through it.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So we're going to create, that's going to be our heritage line. Then they create, have you got the latest logo, Cam? Then Peter creates like the pyramid with the 3 lines.
I see.
Right, let's see what you got. There you go.
That one there.
Right? And that's going to be for our performance line. And so they segment it. And then they apply business strategy, commercial strategy, marketing strategy, sales strategy, and the thing just explodes. And it came down to this shit that they've got that they had no idea what it was, what was in there.
It's almost like they didn't know what they had.
No, they didn't. And then when they find it, but then you've got to have the brains to know what to do with it. And that's where those guys were so clever.
What do you think ran the 1990s? Sorry, was this 80s where it ran into the ground and they bought it?
Yeah, late 80s, yeah. A series of owners because...
Different owners just not knowing what they were doing.
So, I won't go into the detail, but Addy's son, Horst Dassler. Yeah. Horst is an incredible, fascinating guy.
You know your shit about these brands. I'm so impressed right now.
No, but this is because I know you wanted to talk a little bit about some of the activism. Yeah. Horst Dassler and Adidas are responsible for the majority of corruption in sports governance.
What?
Yeah. So Horst was a smart fucker, right? And Horst realised very early on that if you look at these international federations, you look at the IAAF, the International Athletic Federation, the IOC, FIFA, right?
Yeah, we're talking about this and how much corruption.
You look at how they're run and what they do. Yeah. You've got 211 countries who are members of FIFA. Every country, whether you are Botswana or whether you're United States or Germany, you have 1 vote. Yep. And Horst the fucker went and sponsored all of these Eastern European countries and these African countries that he could sponsor them for a hamburger and a packet of chips, right? And then he's in a position to direct those countries as where to apply their votes when it comes to the next Congress where they elect the next president of the IAAF or the IOC or FIFA. And so Horst, his thing wasn't about the purity of sport and the passion of sport. His thing was about the business side. And he would go to all of these conferences and these meetings, but he would park his ass in the hotel and he would accost all of the members of the federations and buy them drinks and buy them dinner and get to know them and how fellow well met and all that sort of shit. And then he was in a position, and one day he went and saw a guy called Juan Antonio Samaranch, who was just a Spanish Federation member of the IOC, and said to him, I control Eastern European votes and African votes, so I reckon I could probably deliver 80 out of your 200 and whatever votes or 70. How would you like to be the next president of the IOC? It gets better. Ask yourself, why is it that each of these federations, there's one brand that's allowed to have a design feature of 3 stripes that runs down their arm and runs down the side of their shorts? Where's Nike's equivalent? Where's Puma's equivalent? Right. right? Because of the deals that he was doing. And there's a great photo of horse funeral, and walking behind horse coffin is Juan Antonio Samaranch, then president of the IOC, a guy called Primo Nebbiolo, who was head president of the IAAF, Sepp Blatter, and Sepp's predecessor, the Brazilian guy, João Havelange, who was then president of FIFA, right? And all of these people were getting suitcases of cash. And I know this because I had somebody who worked for us at Skins who used to be one of the bagmen responsible for delivering bags of cash, right? As well as all this.
This is like the 80s and the 90s.
Yeah, absolutely.
God damn.
And Horst, so this is what Horst did.
Yeah.
And Horst was the guy that basically created that culture whereby suddenly these people who are in these serious roles and powerful roles of authority in these organizations, suddenly it becomes about what I can do for me as opposed to what I can do for the great sport of football.
Right.
And we've just seen all that shit collapse.
Yeah.
Right? You know, it goes from one person to the next thing you know is you've got however many the FIFA executive committee, right?
Yeah.
And whatever it was, 6 of them being arrested in Zurich.
Yeah, well, like we were talking about, like unpack exactly what happened, because I don't follow sports anywhere near the pedigree that both you do, but like.
Well, I can tell you, I was on the ground.
Yeah.
I had actually ripped off the masthead for the International Herald Tribune, and I printed 30,000 copies of the International Herald Tribune in English, and if you turned it upside down, it was in German. And it was a 32-page newspaper, 16 pages in each language. And we worked with the world's best football journalists to create spoof stories. So the front page story was Qatar. FIFA have taken away the 2022 World Cup from Qatar due to corruption, and they're going to rerun the process in a clean fashion, right? So there were all these stories that were all tongue-in-cheek, piss-taking.
Yeah.
And I got on board. We did a campaign called, I've forgotten it. Anyway, I went to, what happened is I went to Doha and I got smuggled into labour camps because there were all these stories, these awful stories going on about conditions for labourers from Nepal or wherever working on the World Cup infrastructure. So I went there, got smuggled into labour camps and took hidden camera footage of the most appalling conditions you could possibly imagine, living and working conditions for these people. Went back to London and cut this short film called The Hypocrisy World Cup. And what I did was I targeted 6 of FIFA's sponsors, primarily Adidas, McDonald's, Visa, Coca-Cola, right? Those were the 3 biggies, right?
Yeah.
Visa, Coca-Cola and McDonald's. And the pitch was this: you sign up to the United Nations Charter for Human Rights, yet you're happy to facilitate FIFA awarding the World Cup to a country that has a kafala labour system, which is slavery. And these people are dying, living in appalling conditions, all that sort of shit, not being paid, yada, yada, yada. So we did that, and as part of that launch of that film, I got into bed with an organisation called the International Trade Union Confederation, which was then run by an Australian woman, Sharon Barrow. Sharon lives in Belgium, in Brussels. And she is the most powerful union leader in the world. So she'd have one-on-ones with Barack Obama and with Angela Merkel, because that's the organisation that sits above all democratic unions in the world, right?
Wow.
So immense power. And Sharon was awesome. When she saw what we were doing, she said, I want to help. So one morning, she and I are down in the Hauptbahnhof, the main train station in Zurich, handing out these newspapers to commuters coming off as if it's the International Herald Tribune. Here's a FIFA World Cup edition.
Yeah.
Unbeknownst to us, 200 metres down the road is the Bar-Alac Hotel. And at that moment is when the FBI are in there arresting those 7 FIFA, right? So when we heard this, I raced down there and I spent all day standing outside the Bar-Alac doing interviews with television stuff, because it was like you see on TV, where you have the world's media all lined up, right? And all with the talking head, right? And I was going from one to one to including, and then the ABC gave me media accreditation to go to the FIFA Congress, which started 2 days later. And I went in there with their media accreditation, got got my pass, went in there, and then got evicted after 4 hours. Security guys, FIFA security guys came around and manhandled me and kicked me out.
Yeah, because you were one of the Skins was one of the first brands that was in defiance of like being okay to publicly portray we do not support the FIFA World Cup.
Oh, we went through, and it was before that we knew, because when we talk about branding, and you've got to define and articulate what it is you stand for.
Exactly.
For us, it was fueling the true spirit of competition.
I love that.
Okay, and the product link, it's about the purity of sport,
Right.
and it's about the concept that you don't need to cheat to win. Wear Skins, right? So you want to improve your performance, wear Skins. You don't need to cheat, and whether that's cheating is doping, or whether it's diving, or whatever it is, it's about touching people's hearts about the purity and the beauty of sport.
And for you, like what when you're building the brand, how important is it to have that true line? To like,
it's critical, and that
stick to it,
and that
own
red
it.
line runs through everything you do.
Yeah.
Even so, here's a good example. After we articulated, we said, well, this is now going to frame how we look at sponsorships. So, we could have the best athlete in the world come to us.
Yeah.
But if they're a cheating fucker, I don't care how good the deal is. I don't want to be in business with you.
Yeah.
So that concept, and it resonated not just with the public, it resonated culturally as well.
Yeah.
And it enabled us to be somewhere that people wanted to come and work because they understood and believed in what we stood for. I mean, you've still got to do all the commercial shit, and you've still got to work hard and all that sort of stuff, but to have that, and it was, I think it was really instrumental in creating that corporate DNA as well as the brand DNA.
Yeah.
And you reflect it in your packaging and in your comms.
Yeah.
And you can do smart stuff. And that's the fun shit. That I really got into that.
Would you say your heart is really also in like philanthropy and helping people and doing good in the world? Like, is that like one of your guiding North Stars through all of
I don't know that I articulate it that way. What I would say is, what I wanted to do, and this comes back to what I said before about this awful formulaic approach.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, if I've got a marketing budget of $1 million,
right,
and if I'm prepared to say part of that marketing budget I'm going to apply to formulate conventional 101 shit, I'm going to get a photo of an athlete wearing my product, and I'm going to put them in the magazine, and it basically says so-and-so wears this, therefore you should too.
right.
And everybody knows that these people are paid,
Yeah.
right? Cristiano Ronaldo holding up a can of Coke.
Yeah.
It's not a good example because he moved that out of the water, right?
Tips it over, yeah.
Right? But, and the next thing you know is you've got the same photo where the Coke can has been replaced by a Nokia phone. And the next thing you know, that's been replaced by something. Let's just churn it out,
Yeah.
Everybody knows that shit.
Yeah.
And so one of my objectives was, how do I take that situation where instead of applying 950 grand to the 101 shit and 50 grand to purpose, how can I show this purpose stuff really works to get those proper brands to understand the power of purpose? Because the beauty of purpose isn't just cut through getting noticed, but we can do some good. So if we can get change at the presidential level of FIFA, if we can activate and make change and have somebody come in and clean it up, that's really positive for all of us because we all own FIFA.
Yeah.
Right? We all own football.
Yeah.
So whether it's that or whether it's if we can, and it's not about being a goody two-shoes. And I kept saying to everybody, the weird thing about this is I'm one of the dodgiest people I know. And for me to be,
At least you're honest about it.
Well, for me to be lecturing people on the morality of sport, and I don't mean like I'm out there cheating like that. I'm just saying ethically.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not Mr. Clean Man. I'm not, there are plenty of other people out there that are much whiter than me.
Well, okay. Well, on that note, a question we like to ask in every episode is like, what is the craziest thing that you've done to make a profit in this world of branding?
Can we come back to that? I need to think about that.
We can come back to that.
I don't know how to answer that, but I'm going to have a look.
I would love to hear, because just your reaction tells me there's a few things. Okay, so then pivoting to where you are now, I understand, and you've shared this story before where, Skins got massive and there were some problems. What I understand is, the company had some troubles and it still exists, right? Like you sold it?
So no, I put it into bankruptcy. So I was based in Switzerland, and I had to put the Swiss global operation into bankruptcy, which then collapsed the 7 or 8 different companies around the world.
Right.
It was then the IP was then purchased by a Chinese company.
Yeah.
I tried to engage with them to see if I could assist. They wanted nothing to do with me.
Right.
Fairly understandable.
So the brand still exists, and it's a
doing
sad
fuck
story. It's a big story. We can certainly unpack it another time. But
Yeah.
what I'm really excited about is what you're doing now.
So
with EO.
what was eye-opening for me through that journey was the idea that, and I touched on before, Ronaldo, chop and change, the conventional bullshit.
Yep.
If I can create a product, which I did before, that an elite athlete doesn't just want but they need,
Right.
because that's their livelihood.
Yeah.
If you've got something that makes me a better rugby player, a better footballer, a better runner, a better cricketer, a better tennis player.
Yeah.
If you've got something that I need, then I'm going to buy it from you.
Yeah.
And the moment
Because
I
that
do
seemed
that,
to be your thing. It was like, we have a brand so good, athletes are paying us.
that's where it came from.
Right.
But the moment I do that, and the moment I'm now selling to you as an elite athlete,
Right.
that gives me a position and a validation that none of the Nike hasn't got it.
Yep.
Adidas hasn't got it, because their deals with Manchester United and Man City and Bayern Munich, they're all based on Nike and Adidas paying them the money,
Right.
right? So the moment that I've got something that you guys are paying, that validates me dramatically.
I see what you're saying. It gives you an X factor and an edge.
And then when you go down that pyramid of influence to your serious amateur,
Yeah.
and they then look for guidance, the smart ones.
Right.
The thickos go, oh yeah, Cristiano Ronaldo likes Coca-Cola, I'm going to drink Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Right? But that's not the consumer that I want. The consumer I want are the people that are intellectual and think and they understand and they research.
Yeah.
And when they see that and they know that, that gives you a halo over your brand that is invaluable. It's priceless, right? And then that enables you to sell to the serious amateur.
Yeah, because that gives you a stronghold in the market that people can't take from you.
But you've got to have a few things. So the first thing you've got to do is have something that nobody else has got.
I agree.
So with skins, we had a product that nobody else had.
Yeah.
What we're doing now, our first product is a swim product.
Yeah.
Nobody else has got it.
And to explain this product, essentially, the way I understand it, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, is as someone is swimming, it calculates how fast they're moving or how powerful their strokes are.
No, it does. So I'll describe it this way. In cycling, they've got things called power meters.
Okay.
And a power meter operates, in cycling works on a 2-dimensional plane. You know, your pedals are doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And it measures the amount of power that you're pushing at every stage through that rotation of the pedal.
Okay.
And you can refine your cycling technique to balance the amount of energy you're expending
All right. So
with the outcome
managing
of power.
your energy so you're not using too much power.
But you're not using too much energy in order to generate whatever power. And then you and it comes down to also it's a function of the weight that you are, and you then got watts per kilo and all that sort of stuff. What we've done is way more sophisticated than that.
Because you're working on a 3-dimensional plane with a breaststroke.
No, with a 3-dimensional plane in water. So the moment you do it in water, it complicates things.
Yeah.
And so what these things do
So 3-dimensional plus water makes it a lot harder.
makes it so much
Oh,
harder.
you brought one with you.
Yeah, I'm pretty smart. So what these things do
Yeah.
is you wear them on your hands.
Okay.
And they've got
Can we zoom in on that? Cool.
only 2 things on them. They've got a button and they've got an LED, a light.
Yeah.
And so when you turn them on, the light comes on.
Yep.
And then are ready to go.
That's it.
That's ready to go. And then what I do is if I double click them, now they're recording. Now I can get in the water and I can start swimming.
And that can attach to a phone, an app.
No, yeah. And so what you do is you collect your data, and then after you've collected your data, you stop the recording.
Yeah.
Come on, baby, stop recording. And now I've recorded a file, albeit an air file, right?
Yeah.
And then you download that data to the phone,
Yep.
and then that data the phone pushes it to the cloud, it processes it and comes back. And then you've got this unbelievable, sophisticated analysis of your swim stroke.
Wow.
Now, if you can imagine this, there is a pressure sensor in here, a highly sophisticated, very accurate pressure sensor. And as my hand moves through water, it measures the force that I'm pushing through that water. And if I want to swim in that direction, my ability to swim in that direction entails pushing an amount of force. And obviously, the more force you push, the faster I'll go.
Right.
And the direction that it's going.
Yep.
Because
so the angle of your hand is on when you're doing your stroke.
And if my stroke goes like that,
Yeah.
that's sending me like that.
Yep.
If it's going like that,
Yep.
it's sending me that way.
Right.
And so we break down. Your hand can move in 6 directions in the water. My hand can move left, right, up, down, forward,
Yep.
and back.
Backward.
And what we can do is we can show you your 100% energy, how much of that force is moving in the direction that you want.
Because as you push back, let me understand this a bit better. Going back to when I used to swim a lot or surf, as you're pushing the water behind you, your hand will wobble a little bit.
Absolutely.
So then you have to like learn how to stabilize.
You can do. And not only some people it doesn't wobble, but it also rotates.
Yeah, rotates.
And if you think about it, if my feet are pushing, if it's pushing that way, right?
Yeah.
Doing that is one thing. But if I rotate my hand
Just
and
a
move
little
in a
bit.
little bit,
Yeah.
it loses water and propulsion drops off.
Oh.
And then I find it and get it again.
So professional swimmer could think that they have got it down.
Absolutely. They put this on and they go, oh my God.
Yeah.
Right? But the beauty about it is that oh my God moment is awesome because that oh my God moment enables them,
Validation.
but enables them to find areas that they can improve.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is what every athlete wants.
And so many of these swimmers, because when you break it down, the majority of the force goes in 2 directions, either pushing back towards your feet
Yeah.
or at the beginning of the stroke, pushing down. And you'd be amazed at the amount of NCAA swimmers in the US that I was working with last year
Pushing down.
that have got only 25% propulsive, but 60 to 65% down.
What?
And when you explain the principle,
Yeah.
right, and if you can get them to convert a chunk of that into that,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
things change.
Can I try them on?
Yeah, of course.
That's cool, man. And that's crazy. So like, did you invent this product? Like how did you,
My team did.
your team did, but whose idea was it to create this in the first place?
So we actually didn't start this. It was started by an industrial design company here in Sydney in Balmain.
okay.
And they got it to what we call proof of concept position point.
Right.
And then we went and bought it from them and we then miniaturized it, wrote all the software and did it. Because if you can imagine, there's 3 stages. Stage 1 is collect the data.
Right.
Stage 2 is then run it through all the analytics.
Yeah.
And then stage 3, which is critical, is present it. And if you want a larger number of people, if you want to go more than just biomecs and sports scientists, because if you're just going to biomecs and sports scientists, your market's very small.
Yeah.
If you want to go to triathletes, you need to have a very simple, easy to understand system so that when you present it, it's clean and nice.
Yeah.
And now we worked a lot on that.
Yeah. So this has been 2 years in the making.
Oh, way longer.
How long has it taken to develop this properly?
Well, it was in development for years before we took it from that point, and then
Right.
we've been going on this for 3 years,
Right.
over
Okay.
3.5.
What would be your advice for anyone that has an idea for something like this to want to try to create their own technology? Like, is there a way to?
Don't do it.
Okay.
Make sure you've got absolute shitloads of money. Like, think about how
Yeah.
much you need, and then put a 0 on the end,
Yeah.
and make sure you've got much more time than you think
Make sure
it's
you
going to
love money pits.
take. It's
Okay.
always going to cost more, and it's going to take longer. That's
Right, but this seems like a very much a passion thing for you too, and I like what you've done with the logo and the sensor. Okay, and they're comfortable to wear. So this would retail. I'm just going to take a stab in the dark here. Obviously, to people that swim in competitions, and that includes like marathons and things of that triathlon. Sorry, who else would buy something like that? Would that be like people that surf or people that are?
well, funnily enough, we were approached by Surfing Australia for a conversation because, I mean, you're a surfer.
I
And
used to
in
be.
surfing competition,
Right.
the first one
You gotta paddle out.
The first one to get there
It's the first wave.
gets the first wave.
Yep.
Therefore, the idea to use this to change and adapt,
All right.
measure your paddling technique and change it. Because the beauty about it is, it doesn't just measure where you are today.
Yeah.
You measure where you are today. You then you then set your objective of where you want to go.
Yeah.
You make changes. You measure the outcome of those changes.
Yeah.
Oh, that worked really well. I'm going to do more of that.
Okay.
Until you get to where you want to go. And then when you get to where you want to be, you've then got to maintain that. So you need to constantly use it thereafter.
And like for you, like, because it sounds like you've been wildly successful with skins, and now you're in this world. It seems like you're very interested in the world of wearable technology.
Well, with skins, the problem was we were a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
We had a pair of tights
Yeah.
using a technology that we did not own the technology. We had no
Duplicatable. You couldn't patent
Exactly.
it. People
And
were
not only-
copying it.
Not only that, the cost of entry to copy it was nothing.
Right.
So other brands would go out, as long as you could get a fabric company
Right.
who would make you different grades of fabric and then you cut it. So you think about that.
Yeah.
Versus the hardware creation of this is very difficult.
Yes.
Then you've got to start with the software.
Yeah. Because this is software and hardware and science and data.
And you can't just get any old, somebody that knows how to write software.
Yeah.
Unless you know how to swim,
Oh, God.
right? Unless
Yeah.
you know all the... And I was really fortunate. The guru behind the tech,
Yeah.
the absolute guru, PhD in physics, right? Brain bigger than you two combined.
Yeah.
Not quite as big as mine. But you know what I mean? I mean, absolute genius.
But you're a glutton for punishment, man. Because the first brand, you had to learn, how to use garment technology. You had to learn how to.
Yeah, but that's interesting shit. You see,
I know, but that's why I'm
that's the
fascinated, because you dived headfirst into that world with no idea.
Yeah.
And it feels like you're doing it all over again, because this is like 10 times more complicated than
way
what you're
more
doing with
complicated.
skins. Yeah.
But the principle, once I understood the principle
Right.
of this, and then you look at, you do the commercial lens, and the commercial
okay.
lens is how big's the market,
Yeah.
and what else is out there. And the moment you see there's nothing else out there, the hairs on your arms start standing up, and you go, oh, hang on, because I like things where you have got a monopoly
Right.
for obvious reasons, and then you've got the ability to go and patent this, which we're doing or we've done. We've got global patents in place.
Yeah.
Then you can look at how creative and strategic it can be, and we've already got, in a very short time, we've sold to 15 national head coaches and federations.
Wow.
Right?
So you're doing it all over again, and you're already retailing this, or is this still being developed?
So you were going for you were going to ask about price.
Yeah. How much is it for a pair of these?
So US $1,000,
Okay.
Aussie $1,350.
Yeah.
And these have got a 90-minute chip inside them.
Right.
We do have a cheaper version, which is $800 US, and that's only got a 15-minute chip
Yeah.
for recording time.
Yeah.
But if you want the larger chip, it's 1,350 Aussie,
Yeah.
and the smaller chip's 1,000 Aussie.
I would say it's pretty reasonable. I spent $780 on a Apollo Neuro. I don't know if you know what that is.
Yeah.
They're brilliant.
Oh, look, when you understand what this shit does,
Yeah.
and
And if you're an athlete and you want to get the edge in dude, $1,000.
But we only talk force. The other thing it does is hand path, so you can see the path that your hand travels,
What? Like how wobbly it is or how straight it is?
and you can see it in 3 directions. You can look at it side on, you can look at it top down, and you can look at it head on.
Holy crap.
Right, and then you can also now you can sync it to video.
Yeah.
Right, because when you started, you saw when it was flashing.
Yeah.
You capture the flash, the first flash.
Yeah.
That's the synchronized point to video. So I was a couple of months ago up in Brisbane.
Right.
I was invited by Swimming Queensland to be part of a 4-day camp with the Australian emerging 4x100 men's relay team.
Yeah.
And it's the emerging 4x100 men's team, which it's not for Paris, it's for Los Angeles. They work 5 years out. And so I was there doing data and video with these boys over 4 days, which was fascinating. And it wasn't just with Swimming Queensland, it was with Swimming Australia, with the 7 boys, and with their coaches. And basically, they want to have some unified strategy and training regime and preparation for Los Angeles 5 years out that's building to that. This is the sort of shit that Rugby Australia dream about, that Rugby Australia have fucked up so badly when they've got all these super clubs going off and doing. This is what Rugby Australia are trying to do now, is implement what the Irish have got and what the All Blacks have got, which is everything cascades up to the national team.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I was blessed to go and spend 4 days, and we would get video and data, easily synchronize it, and you can see what's going on in the data. You see shit in the data you can't see with a video.
Also, like, I can imagine, a young athlete who's at the top of their game, peak performance, they're competitively natured. You sit down with them, they think they've got it down. Oh, I can't improve much. And then here's the data.
So the reason the coaches love this,
Yeah.
they say, look, I've told this guy till I'm blue in the face, and he either doesn't believe
listen to
me
me,
or he won't listen to me. The moment you show the data, and you can show, for example, you show the propulsion curve. The propulsion goes up, and then halfway through the stroke, the propulsion dies, and then it goes up again, and then it finishes. And you explain that you see where the propulsion drops. That propulsion is what's sending you forward. And if that propulsion dies, so does your forward velocity.
Right.
And then they go, oh my God, I didn't realize.
Like debate that. You know, look at that data right there. Okay, so like explain this to me. Like, how do you see the world of, you know, whether it's swimming or running or cycling or playing professional sports or what have you? Like, what do you see happening with wearable tech? And how big of an industry is this going to become?
Oh man, it's going to be massive. I mean, it's going to be massive. There are so many applications for technology to help us, because this conversation started with you talking about the evolution of times.
Yeah, it feels like, you know, the leap in an advantage for an athlete is minuscule compared to maybe what it was 40 years ago.
Well, you're always going to end up with a point of diminishing returns. You look at...
There'll be a point at which you can't improve, right?
Physiologically, you'd imagine.
Yeah.
Although you never know.
Who knows, right?
You never know.
Where shit's going.
But as we also progress... all those savings and those improvements become even more and more valuable with the money.
That's what I mean. Like the more minuscule it is, the harder it is to have an edge. And then if you give that to, let's say, Ian Thorpe at the peak of his career, he would have had...
sell it to Ian Thorpe.
Yeah, we sell it. We don't give it. You know, that puts you right in the predominant eye of any consumer that wants to learn how to swim faster.
Absolutely.
Right. But like, what do you see happening in the next decade?
I see as, and because, so let me explain it to you this way. So one of my co-founders is Dr. Kenneth Graham.
Okay.
Kenneth was 24 years at the New South Wales Institute of Sport.
Christ.
He was New South Wales Institute of Sport employee number 1 in 1996 when it was established in preparation for the Sydney Olympics in 2000. He's a sports scientist, and his last 14 years was chief scientist. So this whole engine room of this business concept is, frankly, it's how do we take what's in Kenneth's head, having worked... Here's a man who's worked with a small amount of elite athletes.
So he knows what you need to be measuring.
He knows what moves the needle, right? What moves the needle for performance. He knows the research behind it.
Yeah.
He knows the biology and the physiology behind it. And he also knows the emerging technologies that are coming through.
Right.
So Kenneth said to me, he said, Jaimie, what we're doing now in swimming, we did 20 years ago in rowing. But the difference is, in a rowboat, you could put a 1 kilo box where you're collecting that data.
Yeah.
We've had to wait until miniaturization has enabled us to be able to create a product. So as technology, you know, what's that law where...
IBM law?
Sorry?
The IBM law?
No, it's the one where, you know, every 12 months the power doubles, the memory doubles, and the size.
Oh, right, yeah.
The sort of
power of computing doubles, and then it started to diminish recently, or
right, but the size
exponentially.
But the size
scale.
of it reduces dramatically. So as that happens, we're going to end up with the ability to have genuinely put stuff on your body that's collecting and transmitting and doing.
Becoming like a cyborg.
Exactly.
Just implant
and
something.
That's going to happen. And so the role that tech will play.
Yeah.
And so for some people, for the purists, they'll be pissed off.
Yeah.
Right. And I get that.
I get it, but like, you know, if you can inject something and get a far superior advantage over another competitor, then you're going to do it.
Well, I won't talk about injecting.
It's a Moore's law.
Moore's law. That's
okay.
it.
Yeah. Moore's law is the one where, let's explain it, Cam. Like,
as a computer powering, as the number of transistors on a computer chip doubles approximately every 2 years. So the power of the computer doubles every 2 years.
And something kind of similar is happening with micro technology.
Well, no, there's a thing called. I'm really out of my depth here. Where you've got the.
We can Google it.
They're looking for the next revolution, which then changes the fundamentals of computing.
Yeah.
Which then will look at like 1,000 times the speed, but it's not just an evolution of the current technology. So there's that sort of shit that's going to happen.
Yeah. The other product I saw on your website that you're developing, and Cam was explaining this to me, is in, I guess, what's happening in sport at the moment. There's a lot of concern around concussions and brain injuries and so forth. Yeah. And you guys are in the midst of developing a product that can identify if someone is concussed.
We partner with a company that owns the technology.
Right.
That does an EEG, an electroencephalogram, Most people know what an ECG is, an electrocardiogram.
I don't know what
which
either of those is.
An electrocardiogram measures your heart waves.
Right, I know what that is.
Right?
Yeah.
And an electroencephalogram measures your brain waves.
Right, and you can wear this, and
You wear it. It's like a virtual reality headset that you put on.
Right.
And there are 5 sensors that connect to your back of your visual cortex on the back of your head. And
you don't have to inject anything.
No. It just sits on
your head.
on your head, and it flashes lights in your eyes, and
Right.
your brain responds to that flashing.
Right.
And what we know from the research is a concussed brain will respond differently to a non-concussed brain. And so what you're able to do is take somebody that's had a head knock
Yeah.
that you might suspect has had a concussion,
Yeah.
put this on, and in less than 2 minutes you can run this test,
Yeah.
and you're able to see the likelihood of whether they're concussed or not.
Right, because isn't there a manual test in sports where athletes will manually
They ask you a series of questions.
and what seems
what
to
they do-
happen is
well, what they do
athletes
is they-
underperform.
No, yeah, when they do a baseline, because at the beginning of the season, before you're
Yeah.
had anything, you answer those questions,
Yeah.
and they measure it, and then these players are coached to dumb down the way they answer.
So they have a lower threshold so they don't get identified for having a concussion.
which, when you think about it, is fucking lunacy.
That's pretty crazy.
Right?
But
It is
like
lunacy,
I know how this world is, and we've had we've had some amazing conversations with Marty Topol, who's was on the Sea Eagles and is now playing for the Broncos. But he's just explained the world of how fiercely competitive it is, and these guys will do anything to get into these teams and so on. But they underperform on these tests, and which is mental. But you've found a way to help remedy that.
Yeah, because you can't game this.
Yeah.
Even there are some eye tracking devices too.
Okay.
So you can get an eye tracking, but frankly, an eye tracking device is the modern equivalent of follow my finger, right? And it is.
Yeah.
That's what it is, right?
Yeah.
And it works on the principle of the eyes,
But a brainwave won't lie.
and you can't lie with a brainwave.
Yeah.
All you can do is close your eyes fiercely and try, but then you're going to get found out very quickly.
Yep.
So yeah, this is really important tech to be able to do this, because the implications and the CTE implications, the long-term, or not even long-term, short-term dementia. I mean, we're talking about All Blacks getting diagnosed with dementia at the age of 34,
Christ.
right?
Yeah.
The implications are horrendous. So if you've got something that can help change that dynamic,
Yeah.
which is about information and about giving the doctors and the players better information, there is an inherent conflict here, and that is that if you are susceptible to this problem, you are going to potentially become unemployable. And that's where it becomes very tricky financially for a lot of, I mean, you look at UFC, right? Look at how brutal that is.
Yep.
I mean, you can imagine how many concussions are, but yet they don't want to know because they've got a big money fight coming up. I'll be right, mate. Bollocks.
So and you're partnered with another company in developing this product?
They've developed the technology, and we want to take that technology and make it available
Okay.
in the first instance for elite sport,
Yeah.
and then for grassroots.
Okay. And then with this company, how many people are involved in EO?
With us, we're probably about 12
Okay.
in different capacities,
Yeah.
from product development, sales, research,
Yeah.
marketing, brand. My CEO was actually, he was the, we talked about Adidas.
Yeah, with the
And
cash
Robert
bags,
Louis Dreyfus?
briefcases of cash.
Well, after all that shit got cleaned up,
Yeah.
when Dreyfus bought it for 10,000 euros, and then they turned it around,
Yeah.
he then went and IPO'd it.
Okay.
And he went to Swiss UBS in Zurich to do the IPO. And the guy who ran the IPO process was Dean Hawkins, my CEO.
Wow.
So Dean ran the IPO, and he did such a good job that Dreyfus said to him, I want to tap you to come and work with me and Addy. And he went and became his CFO and global head of strategy. And
So you have the global head of strategy for Adidas
running EO.
running. Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah.
And what's next for you guys? What are you looking at doing next?
So we've got another product that's being developed at the moment, which is a sweat device.
Okay.
So where it's cool is it not only, because sweat's about optimal hydration, is about understanding how much you're losing, because if you can lose it, you can replenish it. And so it's not just about the volume of sweat, it's also about the concentration of 5 different analytes within your sweat. So what's
an analyte?
An analyte is like potassium, magnesium, calcium,
Okay.
sodium, and chloride.
Yeah.
So this device will not only tell you how much to replenish, but also what you need to put in it.
Minerals you need to put back in your system.
Specifically potassium, magnesium, calcium, sodium, and chloride. And if you think about this in the context of a marathoner, which goes back to where we started, right?
Yep.
And a drink station every 5Ks.
Yep.
And 400 meters before the drink station, you're downloading his data, and you've got a series of drinks prepared.
Oh, and they can add the...
No, you don't add it. You've got them already pre-prepared.
Oh, I see.
And you say, okay,
drink this one.
Drink version 2, version 4, and you give him the specific version that replenishes. I mean, because again,
But like, at what point does it become regulated or illegal to do these things within the sport? You know what I mean?
Well, that's up to the federation to decide what they'll allow and what they won't allow.
Well, Cam was saying to me with the what do you call that device?
Handsets.
What's this handset for swimming
Yeah,
called?
the Swim Better. It's called EO Swim Better.
Swim Better.
Which you can see at eolab.com.
We'll put all the links. We'll put all the links in the
.com.
wherever you're watching or listening to this. Yeah. So Cam, you were explaining that it's approved for competition.
No. FINA, or now they're called World Aquatics.
Right.
12 months ago announced you now can use a wearable in competition.
Huh.
So primarily we're about training.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, the amount of time you spend...
That's where you need the data, right?
That's where you need the data, right?
Yeah.
But now they've announced as of 1 January last year, you can use a wearable in competition as long as it's not broadcasting real time. And ours doesn't. You can swim and then you download.
Yeah. Because if you see it real time, then you could cheat or be seen as having an
I don't know.
advantage.
There's a couple of different schools. The beauty about real time, if you think about it, so let's have a commercial conversation.
It comes like F1.
That's it.
Yeah.
You're talking about building a more enjoyable moment for consumers watching it.
100%. Because you watch F1, you're like, it's not just the driver, it's the pit crew, it's the person on the radio.
Well, I
it's
watch
like,
MotoGP.
Okay,
right?
MotoGP is similar thing.
And MotoGP is fascinating in terms of the lean angles.
Yeah.
And they're leaning at 60 degrees, right? And the speeds and the acceleration. I mean, it's fascinating. And if you can do the same thing for swimming, and I hope that World Aquatics have restricted this because they want to control when they're going to have real-time broadcasting of data. Because it would be fascinating to see different swimmers and how much they're pushing, and and where they're pushing it, right? What their efficiency is like, or effectiveness in their stroke.
Well, do you see like the future of sports going that route? Because, you know, if the way that these competitions make money is views.
Absolutely. I mean, take cricket, and I know you're a massive cricket fan.
I'm not at all.
I know
Definitely
your knowledge of Steve Waugh,
I'm
knowledge
sorry,
of Steve
man.
Waugh shows.
I'm an F1 guy. Watch a bit of basketball and surfing.
But if you watch cricket today, and it's interesting,
or UFC,
been watching the Pakistani Test series.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at Dennis.
I'm looking at Dennis too.
Dennis,
went to 2
Dennis
We need
days.
to
is
look at
looking
Cam. Let's look at
I
Cam.
went to 2 days.
You went to 2 days, Cam. I love you.
There we go.
If you look at, and I was listening to watching the Fox broadcast or the KO broadcast, and what was really great was listening to guys like Wasim Akram saying, what you guys at Fox are doing here is amazing because you've got access to players. We're recording players like David Warner and Usman Khawaja were mic'd up, and they were doing that, which is so interesting.
It's way more. It adds
and
such
it's not
a
real
different
time.
element.
It doesn't need to be real time.
No.
Because you're coming back and you're getting excerpts and saying, listen, let's hear what David and Usman were talking about, the state of the pitch, the bowling and what have you, right? And that's happened because of the commercial relationship between the Players Association and the broadcasters, which it's a rising
brings you
tide
closer to the
floating
sport.
all boats.
Yeah.
Right? It's bringing that money in. And so there is a responsibility that the players have got to participate and share. But in return, they're now making a shitload more money, which is great.
Everyone wins, right? Like, you know, the only thing I can reference is like I watch Formula One and something will happen on the track, but you hear the radio of the person who's frustrated and they're venting or yelling, or it just
There's
adds
a lot of bleeping on that. I don't
yeah,
know
a lot of swearing in F1, but like even how like they used the F1 on Netflix with the documentary Drive to Survive, like
Unbelievable.
That's brought so many new people to the sport. That brought my fiance Ellie into it. She's like, oh, these people are fascinating. Now she can watch a race with me. But like, I agree with you, man. I think bringing people closer to the sport and hearing what's happening and seeing the data live time is going to make the world of sports in the future more interesting.
It has to.
Yeah.
It has to, because, you know, I mean, you look at, you'll know this, Dane, from your deep knowledge of cricket. If you go back to cricket, started with one camera behind one end.
Yeah.
Right? It was Kerry Packer who revolutionised that by, when he did World Series cricket, by piling all the cameras in and showing and innovating.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we're talking about, is innovation. And, you know, we talked about Moore's Law and technology and what's going
Packer
on.
was an asshole, but an innovator for sure. Yeah.
I mean, Hawkeye, which is used in tennis, was taken from cricket.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so like when they use those thermal images and like how it hits the bat, they use that in tennis now.
My frustration, so if I go back to the cricket one, because there's that so what moment for me, and we've been through this with our swim stuff, right? If you can imagine, when you having all that data is great, but so what, right?
Yeah.
What does it mean to me? How do I work out what I need to change to improve? And we've done a lot of work explaining and educating, and it's a wonderful journey to go through, not just for us, but for the user as well. But in that instance, I see a lot of that data that is just there, which is fucking meaningless, right? Okay, so what? So we're showing that the ball has left the bat at this speed, at this angle, and I'm afraid I'm now at the point where I go, so what? Okay, yeah, hi. But if it's directly performance related, which is where we talk about, and the F1, I'm with you on the most fascinating thing of the communications between the cars.
Yeah, the
drivers
drama,
and
the
team.
beef, who's competing with who,
That's another thing that they now have in tennis, where before you weren't allowed to talk to anybody, and now they've made it that you can. You can talk to your coaches at any time, and they're mic'd up as well.
Right.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Because it's all about, we all love to be inside the bubble and love to know what it's like to be inside and get the insight about what are they talking about.
What's it really like to be in this match? Yeah.
I mean, that shit's great. My beef with Formula One, the problem I have with Formula One is they're all a pack of like spoilt little shits.
Yeah.
When I look at MotoGP and I see three guys up on a podium, I see three very happy men who have risked their lives. I mean, really risked their lives. Way more than Formula One.
I would agree with you,
Formula One is dangerous, but MotoGP is
I'm with you,
to
man.
a different level. And
There's
these
another
guys, they celebrate each other and they celebrate themselves. The amount of times I've seen Lewis Hamilton standing on the second step of the podium,
sobbing,
pouting like a prat.
Yeah.
And I think, you twat.
Yeah.
You know, talk about,
oh, man.
That frustrates.
I get you, man.
As well as, you know, the same, I remember years ago we had the first 7 or 8 races. I think we had 8 winners.
Yeah.
I remember Pastor Maldonado won in Spain.
Yeah.
I think it was the 8th race, and there was the 8th different winner. And that was mind-boggling.
Yeah.
That's what competition is, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we want to see.
Yeah.
Not Seb Vettel or Michael Schumacher or fucking, what's his name, Verstappen.
No, I'm with you, man. I'm with you, dude.
That's where I get switched off. It becomes so predictable.
Yeah. It does have that element to it. I got to dive a bit more into MotoGP. So to come back to it, what's the weirdest thing you've ever done to make a profit? We've got to answer it, man.
Thought he forgot.
Yeah, I'll never forget.
I didn't think you'd forget. I was hoping.
It has to be weird.
I was hoping you'd forget.
What's the weirdest thing you've ever done to make a profit?
PR teams like that.
The weirdest thing, the weirdest being out there, and to make a profit, to make money, or to build brand, or to
let's expand it into either building brands or making a profit.
Okay, so I had a 36-hour period that was a little bit bizarre because we talked before about the true spirit of competition.
Okay, and is this recent or is this back?
No, this is Skins.
Yeah, okay.
Right, and we talked about the true spirit of competition.
Yeah.
And after 2012, when Lance Armstrong was basically fucked over. Well, not fucked over, he fucked himself over, but he was destroyed, right?
Is this when he? I don't know the full story, but what just fill us in what exactly
2012,
what happened.
he had all his titles stripped off him.
I remember that. Yeah.
Right, had all his, and he was outed as being a massive doper,
Yeah.
which he'd denied for years and years.
Yeah, and he revealed it, or it was found out. Yeah.
I campaigned and I brought a group together under the banner of Change Cycling Now to activate for changes in the UCI, the Union Cycliste Internationale, which is the global governing body for cycling,
Yeah.
to change the president because the president wasn't doing a good job, because there was a culture of doping and he'd done nothing to change the culture in the sport.
It just became a part of it, right?
It was not just a part of it, it was expected. It was de rigueur. So as part of that, that was my first campaign, was around activism around that. And we succeeded in having the president.
What did you do?
We started this campaign, and I put on a conference in London, brought 15 people together who were all high-profile people in the sport of cycling, highly influential, including guys like Greg LeMond, 3-time Tour de France winner, and a bunch of others. And the whole point of the 2-day conference was to end up with the press conference at the end. And we had a lot of cycling media and sports media, which then enabled us to get the message out that this sport needs to change. This president is unfit to serve. We need to do this. And subsequently at the next Congress, he was voted out directly as a result of our action.
Wow.
Okay. This group sort of was an We Hate Lance Armstrong group.
Yeah.
But what became clear to me through that journey was Lance was not the cause. Lance was a symptom of the problem.
I agree.
The cause was the culture and the sport. Lance just was one of the guys who happened to have the most success, who was the most vocal. He wasn't the biggest doper either, by the way. Anyway, that whole journey made me then want to do more in this space. And so we put together a campaign around athletics and doping in athletics. And I'd approached Lance for a conversation, which he agreed to. And I then approached Ben Johnson. Now, do you know who Ben Johnson is?
Nope.
Do you know who Ben Johnson is? Fuck me, Dad.
I'm sorry, man.
1988 Seoul Olympics, 100 metres, wins the 100 metres. He and a guy called Carl Lewis, right? This is the ultimate one-on-one competition that they were head-to-head.
Can you pull this guy up, Cam?
Right. And Ben Johnson running for Canada, Carl American. Ben won the gold medal in 9.79 seconds. Fated, phone call from the Canadian Prime Minister, huge story. I mean, this is 100 metres in the Olympics. This is the blue ribbon event, right?
Oh, I remember seeing.
Right? This is
like famous footage, right?
and this is everything. Ben is everything in the Olympics. 24 hours later, Ben tests positive for steroids.
Oh,
right. So Ben is the picture postcard. He's the poster child for doping in sport. He's the most famous person up until 2012. And then the baton gets passed to Lance, right? So I had a 36-hour period where I went to Toronto and had lunch with Ben to convince Ben to front a campaign for me called Choose the Right Track, which was a skins campaign looking for, and I'll give you the numbers, right?
Yeah.
WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency,
Yeah.
annual budget, $26 million US at this stage. Kobe Bryant's salary was $52 million. So one player was earning double the annual budget of the World Anti-Doping Agency, right? And so we were basically saying, IOC, world governments, WADA, pull your fucking heads out of your ass and do a proper job. If you want to eradicate doping, you've got to do it with a reasonable amount of money. You're going to do this stuff, right? So I went and had dinner with Ben and convinced Ben. And the purpose for Ben was because we were coming up to 2013 and the 25th anniversary of Ben's gold medal and his doping.
Yeah.
And then the next day I flew to Austin and had lunch with Lance.
Wow.
Now, the Ben campaign, and he agreed and we did it, and we spent 5 weeks traveling around the world together, 7 countries, and we finished up in Seoul, rolling out 100 metres of signatures at 1 p.m. on the 24th of September 2013 in Lane 4 in the Olympic Stadium. So it was 25 years to the minute from Ben's race with the world's press. They're covering it, campaigning for this. And that was a great time, you know. So Ben and I had that five weeks traveling together, and I got to know him really well. Lovely guy, really lovely guy. Lance is Lance on the. I won't say Lance is not a lovely guy, but he's just sharp and smart, right? Probably devious. But Ben is gentle.
To be a cyclist, man, they're on a different level.
Totally different.
Yeah.
And you know, and we kicked off in London. We were on the BBC breakfast program in London.
Yeah.
And the first question Ben got asked was, so this is 2013.
Yeah.
First question, Ben, if you were running now against Usain Bolt, how'd you go? Oh, I'd win. Right? Right? And he got absolutely smashed on social media. Everybody was just the shit that got dumped on his head.
Yeah.
And I kept saying to everybody, come off it. This is a planet of what, 6.5, 7 billion people.
Yeah.
You don't get to be the fastest man on the planet with having some sort of element of confidence, right?
Yeah.
You don't, like we talked before about that mental.
You got to have it, man. You got to have a little bit of arrogance, I think. Yeah.
Of course you do.
Yeah, as an athlete.
Ben told me when we were in Seoul and before we did the event, and we were in the Olympic Stadium wandering around. He was showing me around, and he took me into the room, the dressing room and the preparation room. And he said to me, Jaimie, it was really funny. He said, I remember walking in, and the other 7 guys were already in the room. And I walked in, and I said, because he stutters. He said, which one is going to come second to me today?
Just smack talking people.
And he said they fucking flipped,
Yeah.
right? He said that pissed them off so much.
Yeah.
And he's a fascinating guy. Anybody listens to this, if you've got any interest in this shit,
Yeah.
there's an awesome book called Speed Trap written by Ben's coach, Charlie Francis.
Awesome.
It is cracking. And if you're into your sport, read Charlie Francis's book, and he lays it all out and explains how it happened, why it happened.
We'll put a link under
and what happened.
in the descriptor of this.
Yeah,
but
it's a great story.
That's crazy, man. I heard one story about there was Michael Jordan used to walk into the competitive team's locker room and just walk around and shake everyone's hands because he knew it would just wig him out.
Absolutely.
And then they banned teams and players from doing that because of Michael Jordan. But I think, that's a big part of the sport, man, is trying to mentally mess with the competitors.
Tiger, Ben, Lance, right? All the other shit aside, you've got to have a certain mentality.
Oh, I agree.
To be able to climb that. And we're talking about repeatedly climbing. We could do an hour and a half on Ben, because Ben, there are some amazing stories of Ben.
Yeah.
And how he reckons he was set up.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to get you back, man, because I would love to unpack. Like, there's so many rooms you were in with so many different people that, you know, it's just fascinating hearing a little bit of the behind the scenes of the underground world behind these big companies and these athletes. Like, you see it on television or in the media, you think it's one thing, but there's layers to it. And,
well, let me just say on the Ben front, I know I said he maintains he was set up. He doesn't maintain he was clean. Okay?
Yeah.
Because interestingly, there were 2, he was done for, I think, stanozolol.
I don't even know what that is.
And his coach said his coach was stunned because he's allergic to stanozolol and he was on clenbuterol. Or it's vice versa.
Right.
Right? But what he was popped for, he was allergic to and he couldn't take. And so this isn't Ben and Charlie saying, oh, well, no, Ben's clean, he's never done it.
Right.
They're saying, no. So there's a really interesting backstory behind all that.
Yeah, it's a weird world, man. I really appreciate you for being very vulnerable and candid and just letting us, you know, into your world and understand what it is that you're doing and where you're taking things. And I'm really excited to see what happens with the EO. It's fascinating what you guys are doing. You're breaking ground with technology and really trying to do something good for the sport and many different sports.
Can I leave you with a thought?
Yeah, 100%.
And this is particularly pertinent.
Yeah.
You remember I started off talking about hating the cookie cutter thing?
Yeah. Yep.
I'm trying to turn that upside down.
Right.
If you look at innovation for sports brands, and let's talk about the
Let's be
obvious
real
ones,
honest, yeah.
right? Nike, Adi, Puma, all that shit. If you look at the pyramid, where at the top of the pyramid is your elite, and at the bottom of the pyramid is the fat blokes wearing Nike runners for going to work.
Yeah.
Okay. Where do you think they're applying all their innovation investment?
Down the bottom of the pyramid.
It's all down the bottom of the pyramid. It's all about how do I sell more pairs of shoes, more shirts. It's all about focusing down here.
Well, that's a good point, because if you go back to the origins of Nike, it was all about performance, whereas nowadays it's all about sales and innovation. And I think, you know, that's this is where it's exciting that you're at the other end.
And we've tipped that on its head because for us, and if you take the swim product,
Yeah.
it's not just about what we've got, it's then making a more expensive version of it
Yeah.
and going deeper, which has got a much smaller market,
Yeah.
but being more relevant and more necessary
Yeah.
for those Olympians.
Yeah.
Because again, the halo effect and the power that has over
Big
the
time.
brand.
Yeah.
So that's my thing where I want to stand it on its head. I want to change. And eventually, if we can succeed in doing what we want to do,
Yeah.
we will be a sportswear brand and we will be able to sell like premium. It won't be shit cotton T-shirts.
But you're starting at the top, not the bottom.
And we will maintain continuing to push at the top.
It's
And
important.
more technical and more innovative up there.
Yeah.
And eventually, as the brand becomes more lovable or more known,
Yeah.
then people will buy the performance tops and the performance. I mean, it won't necessarily be hoodies, but
Yeah.
it'll be performance apparel once we have a retail partnership with the appropriate retail, all that sort of crap. But it's all got to be done where that money and innovation keeps going further and further up that pyramid,
Yeah.
as opposed to the others, which is
It's important because I think in the world of like fashion and, like let's just say the aspiration market, I aspire to be like X person, I think is, it's important that someone in the
that's
market.
sport. That's everything about sport.
That's it, right? That's the whole point. So like, why would anyone buy an apparel or an athletic brand that isn't trying to do that? And I think,
good question.
there's brands out there that have a fugazi around that, is what you're saying. And I agree with you. Man, just blowing my mind. We've got to have you back and unpack more of this. It's fascinating. And I just love your approach to branding in the market and just what you're doing. And I just love your heart for people and the true spirit of competition, man. Thanks for being here.
Well, no, now it's about accelerating human progress through sport.
Love it.
EO's the ethos of EO. And by the way, you should have asked me the question you asked, clown. EO,
Fuck, okay.
EO is Latin for progress.
Love that.
So
That's
the core,
beautiful.
the core, the DNA of the brand is accelerating human progress through sport, not in sport.
Right, I see.
And we did a lot of work articulating that before we even came up with a brand name. And it was once we'd landed on that, then my head of creative in London with our agency partner,
Yeah.
he was the one that went off and came back to me and he said, "Hey, Jaimie, here's this word called EO, which is Latin for progress. What do you think?"
Amazing. Who's that guy? Let's give him a shout out.
Seb Hill,
Seb Hill.
BBD Perfect Storm.
You know what you're doing.
And they're our
You know what you're doing, Seb.
They're our partners. They're our partners, and they're also investors in our business.
Love it.
Our agency, and they were the same from Skins as well. They were.
Okay.
So I was their first client
Wow.
when they went out with their ex.
So they owe you a few favors.
No, I owe them, and that was a. I know, look, we've run out, but that was a fascinating journey going through all that shit because we spent 6 months
Yeah.
before we even said, what are we going to call this business?
Right.
It was 6 months about what do we stand for, what do we mean, what do we want the look and feel to be as a brand,
Yeah.
the culture, all that stuff. And that was when we got to accelerating human progress through sport, which gives you the permission, not just accelerating the human progress within the sport,
Yeah.
but using sport as the vehicle to advocate for a nicer and kinder society
Yeah.
and to try and kill so much of this Donald Trump-like shit that we see
Yeah.
going on in the world today, right? How can we use sport to be better?
Yeah. Shake that tree, man, and keep shaking that tree because I'm with you. I love what you're doing.
Good man. Thanks, man.
Hey, dude, thank you so much.